The old house stood, shrouded in a perpetual gloom. Its walls, once vibrant, now seemed to sag under the weight of countless untold stories. It whispered of forgotten laughter and shadowed secrets. The echoes of the past seemed to linger in every corner, every creak of the floorboards. The air hung heavy with the weight of past grievances. This was Elijah's domain, a 10-year-old boy hardened by the world. His eyes, far too old for his age, held a depth of sorrow and defiance. A world that saw him as difficult, a problem. Teachers, neighbors, even strangers in the street, all seemed to judge him with a single glance. 2 babysitters had already quit, their patience worn thin. They left with stories of tantrums and defiance, unable to see the pain behind his actions. The threat of boarding school hung over his head like a dark cloud. It was a constant reminder of his perceived failures. Elijah was a storm waiting to break. His anger was a shield, protecting a heart that yearned for understanding. He knew the power he held, the ability to unsettle those around him, the fear that flickered in his parents' eyes. They were at a loss, unsure of how to reach their troubled son. It was a game to him, a twisted game of strategy and manipulation, a twisted game of push and pull, testing the limits of their love. He craved their attention, even if it was laced with disappointment. Every act of rebellion was a cry for help, a plea for someone to see the real him. His room was a testament to his inner turmoil. Toys lay scattered, casualties of his rage. His room was a testament to his inner turmoil. Toys lay scattered, casualties of his rage. Each broken toy told a story of frustration and despair. Drawings, dark and brooding, adorned the walls. They were windows into his troubled mind, each stroke a reflection of his inner chaos. They spoke of a loneliness that ran deep, a longing for something he couldn't quite grasp. A connection, a sense of belonging, a longing for something he couldn't quite grasp. He waited, he watched. He waited, he watched. He knew they would be back. He knew they would be back. With another stranger in tow. With another stranger in tow. Another lamb to the slaughter. Another lamb to the slaughter. The cycle would continue, and Elijah would remain, a troubled soul in a troubled house. The doorbell echoed through the house, an unwelcome intrusion. Kristen, a name whispered on the wind. She was young, barely an adult herself. Her smile was bright, but her eyes held a calculating glint. She exuded an air of confidence, a determination to succeed where others had failed. Elijah studied her from the shadows. He saw right through her facade. Another one who thought they could handle him. Another one who would underestimate him. He allowed a flicker of a smirk to play on his lips. This was going to be fun. She spoke to his parents, her voice a touch too sweet. Fake. He saw the way she eyed him, a mixture of apprehension and annoyance. Good. Let her be afraid. It fueled his power. The car disappeared down the street, leaving a trail of red taillights in its wake. The game had begun. The night wore on, a silent battle of wills. Elijah pushed, testing boundaries. He refused to eat. He ignored her attempts at conversation. He reveled in her growing frustration. Kristen, for her part, held her ground, at first. But the cracks were beginning to show. The cheerful mask slipped, revealing the irritation simmering beneath. She raised her voice, her words laced with a subtle threat. Elijah laughed. It was a hollow sound that echoed through the empty house. He knew he was getting to her. He could smell her fear, taste her desperation. It was intoxicating. He continued his torment, pushing her further, enjoying the show of her unraveling. He was the puppet master, and she was nothing but a marionette dancing to his tune. A sugary concoction from a drive-through window. Kristen's desperation was almost palpable. Her voice dripped with false sweetness, promising him anything if he would just behave. Elijah accepted the drink, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. He knew he had won. He had broken her. She was no different from the others. The power shifted. The air crackled with a different kind of tension. Kristen's fear morphed into something else. Control. Her eyes, once filled with uncertainty, now held a steely glint. She settled into the couch, a smug smile playing on her lips. She had misjudged him, and she would pay. The lies came easily to Kristen. She had perfected the art of deception, weaving intricate stories with a confidence that could fool anyone. She painted a picture of a monster, a villain so vile that it was hard to believe he could exist. A child out of control, she claimed, a menace to everyone around him. She whispered tales of violence and destruction, her voice trembling with feigned fear, making her lies seem all the more believable. She even planted evidence, a small trinket of hers tucked away in his room, to further solidify her deceitful narrative. Elijah watched, a cold fury building within him. He knew the truth, but felt powerless to reveal it. But his words were meaningless against her carefully constructed narrative, a web so tight it left no room for doubt. He was trapped, ensnared in her web of deceit, feeling the walls close in around him. The front door swung open, a welcome intrusion. His parents had arrived, bringing a glimmer of hope. Their faces were etched with concern, their eyes searching for answers in the chaos that Kristen had created. Kristen, the consummate actress, launched into her performance, her demeanor shifting to one of victimhood. Her voice dripped with crocodile tears as she spun a tale of terror, each word a dagger aimed at Elijah. Elijah's stomach churned with a mixture of rage and helplessness, his mind racing for a way to expose the truth. He tried to speak, to defend himself, but his words were lost in the whirlwind of her lies, overshadowed by her dramatic flair. His parents believed her. Of course they did. She had played them perfectly. They looked at him, their eyes filled with a mixture of anger and disappointment. His heart ached. He wanted to scream, to make them understand. But what good were words now? They ushered him to his room, their voices cold and distant. He was dismissed, disregarded. His protests fell on deaf ears. He was alone, trapped in a nightmare of Kristen's making. But amidst the despair, a flicker of hope ignited. A plan began to form in his mind. He remembered the small digital recorder he had found tucked away in his toy chest, a forgotten birthday present. He had accidentally turned it on earlier that evening, forgetting about it until now. It had recorded everything. Kristen's lies, his pleas of innocence. It was his only chance. The wait was agonizing. Every tick of the clock felt like an eternity. Seconds stretched into minutes, minutes into hours, as the anticipation gnawed at his insides. He paced his room, clutching the recorder like a lifeline. His mind raced with thoughts of what might happen next, the possibilities both thrilling and terrifying. Finally, he heard the sound he had been waiting for. A murmur of voices, faint but unmistakable, reached his ears. His parents' voices, hushed and serious, coming from the living room. He could sense the gravity of their conversation even from a distance. He crept down the stairs, his heart pounding in his chest. Each step felt like a leap into the unknown, his breath shallow and quick. He saw them seated on the couch, their faces etched with worry. The weight of their concern was palpable, hanging heavy in the air. Kristen sat opposite them, a smug smile playing on her lips. She had won, or so she thought. Her confidence was almost tangible, a stark contrast to his parents' anxiety. He stepped into the room, his small frame trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. The moment of truth had arrived, and there was no turning back. He held up the recorder, his voice surprisingly steady. The device felt heavy in his hand, a symbol of the truth he was about to reveal. "I think you need to hear this." His words cut through the tension, a beacon of clarity in the fog of uncertainty. The color drained from Kristen's face as she realized what he held. Her smugness evaporated, replaced by a look of sheer panic. His parents listened, their expressions morphing from disbelief to horror as his voice filled the room. The truth was undeniable, echoing in the silence. The truth was laid bare. The carefully constructed web of lies unraveled before their eyes. Kristen was exposed. The carefully constructed web of lies unraveled before their eyes. Kristen was exposed. The realization hit them like a tidal wave, leaving them reeling. And Elijah, for the first time in a long time, felt a surge of hope. He was believed. The weight of doubt lifted, replaced by a newfound sense of relief and optimism.